The last of the pine logs sighed into coals, and the listening circle of children pulled their blankets tighter as the mountain air began to nip at their cheeks. Sparks leapt upward, brief and golden, only to fade a moment later against the velvet night. Grandmother Lyra, whose voice carried the hush of snowfall and the crackle of 100 past fires, stretched her hands toward the heat that remained. "Oh, watch those sparks," she told them, and the tiny tongues of light seemed to pause mid-sleet as if awaiting her permission. "Each one is a story, and every story is an ember that might yet become a star, if the ember bees deem it worthy." She let the words linger until the wind rustled the pines again. The children, who had walked all day to reach this summer camp, leaned forward with eyes as bright as the coals, eager to learn what lurked behind the ordinary glow they had always taken for granted. "In the old times," Eora began, "night was emptier than you can imagine. The first people would look up and see only the cold moon and the void beyond, darker than a sealed cave. Travelers lost their way, sailors dared not leave the coastline, and dreamers woke terrified that dawn might forget to return. In that blackness, an ancient queen named Inara mourned her child who had perished in winter. Each evening she lit a single torch for the boy, hoping some wandering spirit would guide him home. One night, as the torch sputtered out, Inara noticed a speck of light drift upward, still aglow, though the flame below had died. Intrigued, she kept watch the next night, and the next, and saw the same miracle again. Those tiny motes rose high and higher, and in time she realized they were shaping a faint trail across the sky, like breadcrumbs for a soul that had lost its way. Lyra paused to stir the coals with a stick, fanning a blossom of red heat. The children followed the sparks with their gaze and felt suddenly protective of each one. What Inara learned, the grandmother continued, was that her grief had summoned the first colony of ember bees. Even the gods did not yet know these creatures, for the gods were busy forging mountains and charting rivers. But the ember bees are older still, born from the first collision of lightning and rain, when creation was raw. They live in secrecy, partly in our world, partly in a seam of reality thin as ash. There they build hives, the color of sunset and the shape of curled hands, hives that hang from invisible threads between starlight and smoke. It is within those hives that all new stars gestate, bright eggs cradled in wax spun from sparks. A skeptical boy named Simon, whose freckles seemed arranged in constellations of their own, lifted a finger. "But real bees gather nectar," he said. "What do ember bees feed on?" Lyra smiled, pleased by the question. "Hope and farewell," she answered. "For every spark you see leave a fire, there is a wish or a memory clinging to it, the last warmth of a story ending, the final breath of a song. Ember bees taste these flavors the way honeybees taste flower petals. They detect the invisible scent of endings. Our campfire tonight, for instance, is steeped in the day's laughter, in the muscle aches of the trail, and in the secret worries you carry. To ember bees, that is a banquet." She bent down, scooped a pinch of cold ash from the fire's edge, and blew it gently into the air. The ash fluttered like grey snowflakes before melting into the night. "Long ago," she said, "the ember bees harvested only sacred fires, the final torch of a funeral rite, the burnt tip of a hero's spear, the signal flames lit on high towers to warn of invasion. Back then, every spark they gathered became a bright guardian in the sky, each star anchored to a human tale. That is why the earliest constellations are shaped like shields, lyres and steeds, remnants of grand deeds. But as humanity multiplied and campfires bloomed on every shore, not all sparks carried noble stories. Some rose heavy with cruelty, others soured by greed. The bees, wise though they are, could not tell a tainted ember from a pure one until it was too late. Stars born from bitter sparks emerged cursed. They flickered erratically, shed poisonous dust, and warped the orbits of their neighbors. The children shuddered. They had never thought a star could be wicked. Leora's voice dropped to a hush. So the Ember Bees sought counsel with Silua, the blind cartographer, a deity who feels the heavens by touch rather than sight. Silua taught them the art of discernment. By vibrating their wings at just the right pitch, the bees could read the history contained within a spark. A gentle hum would reveal love. A harsher buzz unveiled malice. From that day, every colony appointed a cantor, a single bee who sang over each collected ember to judge its worth. Only if the cantor's song returned clear did the spark become wax in the hive. If the note emerged discordant, the spark was exiled, left to extinguish in the upper wind. At this moment, the campfire snapped, sending a spray of sparks aloft. Several children gasped, thinking of choirs of bees auditioning each glowing fleck. Leora let the image stand before she continued. The system worked, but slowly. Too many sparks were still tainted, and the heavens could not risk further corruption. The Ember Bees therefore enacted another law. They would harvest mainly from small fires, intimate ones, where intentions could be easily read. Grandpires of kings and warlords grew suspect, for power often hides rot within splendor. Thus, humble campfires, like ours tonight, became the preferred feeding grounds. It is said that a single truthful laugh shared around modest flames can birth a star brighter than any empire's funeral. From her pocket, Leora produced a curved shard of something translucent, no larger than a thumbnail. She held it over the fire, and its edges glowed with inner flame. "This," she whispered, "is a piece of abandoned comb, a cradle that once housed a starling, what we call a star in its larval stage. When a starling hatches fully, its first act is to melt the wax that held it, honoring the material that shielded its growth. Most of the comb evaporates into cosmic mist, but once in a century a bit drifts down to our world. I found this after a meteor shower when I was younger than you. If you listen close, you can hear the cantor's verdict still echoing within." She raised the shard to each child's ear in turn, and though the wind rustled, every one of them heard a faint harmonic hum, like a wineglass singing under a gentle finger. Simon, no longer skeptical but wide-eyed, asked, "Is there a way to help the bees? To give them sparks that are good?" Leora nodded. "Yes. That is why we tell stories by fireside. Words shape intent, and intent shapes sparks. When you honor someone's grief, share a generous joke, or admit a buried fear while flames listen, your spark rises, balanced, and sweet. The Ember Bees queue above unseen, cups of amber light clutched between their legs, eager to sip that purity. Some villagers even weave special incense sage for memory, cedar for courage, lavender for forgiveness, to perfume the sparks, an offering. So the bees know the storytellers value their celestial craft." She leaned back, her face lined with orange and shadow. However, not all humans appreciate the bees' labor. Generations after Queen Inara, an alchemist named Drovenir grew jealous. He believed mankind should forge its own stars without insect intermediaries. He captured 3 ember bees using nets of moonthread and caged them in glass spheres. For months, he forced the creatures to disgorge harvested sparks into a crucible, hoping to smelt a private sun. But absent the hive's careful choir, the sparks warped into unstable fire. When Drovenir tried to ignite his creation, the blaze erupted sideways through dimensions, swallowing his workshop and burning a scar across the eastern sky that we now know as the Veiled Comet. The trapped bees survived only by slipping through a fissure in time. Yet their wings were forever scorched. From that day forward, ember bees fear captivity more than thunder, and they veil themselves with ripples of air so fine that no mortal eyes can pierce it. A hush followed, punctuated by the distant hoot of an owl. One of the younger girls, Maeva, whispered, "Is that why some stars look blurry? Because of Drovenir's scar?" Leora ruffled the girl's hair. Partly, child. The veiled comet roams still, a reminder that every spark deserves respect. If you see it streak across the sky, you must promise a kindness before it fades, or else its tail will weigh on your dream. The fire had sunk low enough that its light revealed the Milky Way's braided river overhead. The children looked up with new attention, imagining hives nested between those hazy bands, bees zipping from node to node, feeding larvae with teaspoons of captured glow. Leora clapped her hands softly, once. "Now," she said, "I will teach you how to send the ember bees a gift." She instructed each child to snap a twig from the woodpile, no thicker than a finger. "Close your eyes," she coaxed, "and lay into this twig a memory you wish to preserve, a moment from today or from long ago. Picture it shining at one end, sorrowing at the other, real and whole. When you place the twig on the coals, breathe out through your nose and give the ember bees permission to taste that memory. They will know you want it carried gently, not devoured." The children obeyed. Simon recalled the thrill of skipping stones on the lake that afternoon. Maeva tucked in the memory of her mother's lullaby. One by one, they laid their twigs onto the dying coals. Thin smoke curled upward, gilded by fresh sparks that danced like coin-sized planets. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, somewhere just above perception, came a collective buzz, soft but encompassing, as if the night itself hummed satisfaction. A stray spark, brighter than the rest, paused in mid-air. Instead of fading, it drifted sideways, tracing an impossible zigzag that any ordinary ember should not manage. Several children pointed, but the spark vanished, swallowed by a patch of darkness that seemed to quiver. They knew, without needing Leora's confirmation, that they had just witnessed an ember bee collecting their memory. The grandmother exhaled, relieved. "They have accepted our offering," she said. "In time, those memories will harden into starlings. One might sprout wings of turquoise fire. Another could glow shy and opalescent. Thousands of years from now, shepherds or astronauts will use those stars to navigate deserts of sand or vacuum, never guessing they owe their way to a boy's skipping stone or a girl's lullaby. Such is the quiet economy of creation." A log toppled inward, bringing fresh flame. Shadows jumped like startled deer. Leora's face grew solemn. "Yet the balance is fragile," she warned. "The ember bees are not immortal. Queens grow old, cantors lose pitch, and hives crumble if not replenished by good sparks. Lately, too many fires are fueled by spite towers, set alight by war. Forests burned for greed. The bees can only exile so many tainted embers before exhaustion claims them. Some stars we thought were faithful guides now drift because their caretaker hives have withered. The sky, children, is a garden, and ember bees its unseen gardeners. When the gardeners falter, seeds of darkness spread." The children sat in troubled silence until Simon cleared his throat. "What can we do?" he asked. "We're just kids. We can't stop wars." Leora's eyes glinted. "You can tend your own fires," she replied. "Every time you speak truth when lying would be easier, every time you forgive when anger might feel sweeter, you cleanse the sparks within you. People notice. Goodness is contagious. It hops from hearth to hearth like a friendly ember. If enough clean sparks rise, the bees grow strong. If the bees grow strong, they birth more stars worthy of shepherds and sailors, and the world stays navigable for hearts that still hope." She reached into the coals with tongs and drew out a half-burned brand. Holding it aloft, she traced a circle in the air. The ember tip left a glowing afterimage that hung for seconds before fading. "This is the circle of the hive," she said. "Within it lies the chorus of birth. Protect this circle in your lives. Do not gossip cruelty. Do not hoard your stories. Speak them. Secrets kept too long smother into ash unfit for bees or stars." Maeva clutched her blanket. "Will we ever see an ember bee clearly? Leora's gaze softened. "Perhaps," she answered, "but only with the eyes of trust. The moment you try too hard, set traps, bring microscopes, demand proof, the bees slip between heartbeats and are gone. Yet sometimes, when your mind is half asleep and your kindness fully awake, you may glimpse a flicker the colour of molten garnet hovering near a candle wick. Do not reach, simply nod. That is greeting enough." As greeting enough, the night deepened. One by one, constellations peaked above the tree line, the weeping queen, the lopsided hammer, the winding stair. Leora identified each by pointing with her stick, naming the ancient stories wrapped inside. "All of those were once sparks harvested by ember bees," she reminded them. "See how some burn white, others blue, others red? Colour tells the flavour of the spark's origin. Courage ripens blue, wisdom smoulders red, gold, love turns pure white. Somewhere up there, perhaps already glowing dimly, are the stars born tonight from your twig offerings. They will take decades to brighten, centuries to join the map, but beginnings are often invisible." Finally, the coals dulled into mere memory of heat. Leora stood, knees stiff. "Time for sleep," she declared. "Leave the ashes undisturbed. The bees will glean what's left by dawn. If you wake in the night and hear a topspin whir or see the air ripple like water, keep still. That is only the hive's runners transporting extra sparks." The children rose, reluctant. Simon lingered by the fire pit, staring into the greyness, until Maeva tugged his sleeve. Together they trudged to their tents, where dreams awaited. Leora alone remained. She knelt and pressed her palm to the cool ground. Under the surface, roots and worms and stones made their silent treaties. Above, the sky shimmered with fresh pinpoints of silver. The old woman closed her eyes and sent a quiet plea upward. "Guard them well." Moments later, she felt a feather-light landing on her shoulder. Nothing she could see, only a warmth like a sunbeam the width of a teardrop. A sound thrummed gently beside her ear, the same tone she had collected in the Kumshard decades ago. She smiled and whispered, "You're welcome, little architect." The weight lifted, and a speck of light rose, joined by another and another, until a thin procession climbed as naturally as mist, curving toward the black bowl where tomorrow's stars waited to be sown. The ember bees laboured on, unnoticed by all save storytellers and children who believed them. Yet their honeycombs of fire kept the universe from forgetting itself. For as long as humans gathered around circles of flame, confessed into its glow, and let go of sparks carrying hope, the sky's tapestry would mend nightly. And so, beneath new constellations, still unnamed, both bees and humans continued their quiet bargain. One side collecting endings, the other creating them, together lighting paths for every lost child of Earth and eternity alike.